Everybody, it's Pete Vargas III, and I'm here with one of my good friends. And as many of you know, because you hear me talk about him or his content all of the time, I'm here with Mr. Michael Hyatt. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great, Pete. Great to be on with you again.
Well, I'm excited to have you on here, and I'm really excited to talk about this concept and idea that that this book that you've written called The Vision-Driven Leader. Like, I'm super excited about that. I know it's more than a book to you. It's like your life story around, just your journey as an entrepreneur. But man, tell us really briefly overview about this, The Vision-Driven Leader.
Yeah, so let me tell you a story about how this kind of came to be. First of all, vision is not something that's taught in business school. Most people haven't been mentored around this topic. As far as I could tell, there are only 2 books on the subject ever written, and one of them is just flat out doesn't work, is nonsense. So what happened to me in the year 2000, I suddenly achieved this career dream. I've been in the book publishing industry, and I became the publisher of a book publishing division, one of Thomas Nelson's 14 book publishing divisions. At that time, Thomas Nelson was the 7th largest publisher in the world. And I was running a division called Nelson Books. A few weeks into that, I discovered, to my surprise, that division was dead last in every important metric. We had the worst sales growth. In fact, our sales had shrunk. We were going backwards. We had the worst profit margins. In fact, we'd lost money the previous year. And so the CEO came to me and he said, how long is it going to take you to turn this division around? And honestly, I didn't have a clue. But I kind of pulled a number out of the air and I said, I think it's going to take 3 years. And he said, well, that was kind of what I was thinking. You got it. So one of the first things I did is I thought to myself, I've got to get clear on where this is going. I'd been highly influenced by Dr. Stephen Covey. And he said, that it's important to know the end from the beginning. So I booked a hotel room. I went off and I did some serious thinking about what I wanted to see happen in this division. And so I imagined like 3 years from now, or from then, actually 3 years from then. And I said, what are sort of the attributes of the company, that division, what do I want to see? And so I started writing down bullets. Like I said things like, I want to see 5 New York Times bestsellers a year. I want my team, us to do so financially well that our team earns their financial bonuses every year and maxes those bonuses out. And so I went on and on. I had this list, which I now call a vision script, but at the time I just thought it was a vision. But I was writing it in the present tense as though it were happening. Like I'm watching a movie and I'm seeing this happening. I didn't understand the brain science that I do now and how critically important that is for any kind of performance enhancement. I'll come back to that in a minute. But so there was the vision. So I came back from the mountain, as it were, and I got my team together and I said, guys, our division is in trouble. And, we've been given the responsibility of turning it around. And I want to share with you kind of my vision of where I think this could go. And this is wet cement. I need your help to make it better, but I want to share with you kind of a rough draft of where I see it going. Well, they had never been given a vision. Even the entire company didn't have a vision at that time. But as I shared it with them, you could just feel the energy in the room began to rise because morale prior to that had been at such an all-time low because nobody likes to lose. And so people were discouraged. They wanted to quit. They felt trapped. But when I began to share the vision, the room just kind of began to fill with possibility. So we rolled up our sleeves and we got to work. But check this out. 30 days after we started this process, we got the bad news that our biggest author for that year, an author that we were counting on to deliver multi-million-dollar sales, huge profit to our bottom line, she had gotten caught up in this huge controversy. And it was one of those things that was going to bring ridicule to our company and was just going to make a mess out of things. And I felt like, based on that, I actually went and met with her head to head because when I first heard about this, and I want to go into the details because we got in a lawsuit over this and I can't disclose all of it. But when I went to her and confronted her with the issue, she said, no, everybody, that's true. And oh, by the way, I'm not going to change. And I went, wow. So my boss happened to be with me and he said, so what are you going to do? Because you're the publisher. What are you going to do? And I said, I really think we got to, as a matter of integrity, we've got to pull the plug because we're essentially giving her a platform to spout this crazy stuff and it's going to bring ridicule and defamation on us. And he said, well, I think you're wrong. And I think you need to seriously think about it because there's millions of dollars at stake. We paid her $1 million royalty advance, not to mention the millions of dollars worth of sales that we were counting on. So I went home that night. I took a long walk with my wife, Gail, and I explained the situation to her, and she said, babe, you cannot compromise your integrity. You got to do the right thing, and I will totally support you, even if you get fired, even if we're unemployed, even if we have to, go back to ground zero. I said, wow, thank you for that. So I went back into my boss the next day, and I said, look, I've thought about it long and hard, and if you want to publish the book, go ahead. Obviously you can, but I'll have to resign because I just can't be party to this.
Wow.
He said to me, he was so rocked back. He just said, I can't believe you're grandstanding. I said, I'm not grandstanding. I just think this is an issue of integrity. So he said, well, go back to your office and I'll think about this. I told my assistant, I said, pack up my stuff because I think I'm about to be fired and I think I'm done here. And I was pretty distraught. 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from my boss's boss, who is the CEO of the company. And this was Sam Moore, who is a Lebanese immigrant, very fiery personality. And I thought he was going to breathe fire on me and consume me. And he said to me, tell me about the situation. So I told him about the situation. He said, what do you think we should do? I said, I think we should pull the book. I think it compromises our integrity and, it's a short-term gain, but long-term is going to be detrimental. He said, what's it going to cost? I said, well, about $2 million in sales and $1 million in a royalty advance that we're going to have to eat. And he said, get this. He said, you have my blessing to proceed. You're doing the right thing. I'm proud of you.
Wow.
Wow. I couldn't believe it. Now, it didn't make my immediate boss, who reported to Sam Moore, didn't make him very happy. But 2 months later, Sam Moore came to me and he said, why don't you start reporting to me directly? And 5 years later, I was his handpicked successor. He had been the CEO of the company for 47 years, and I was made the CEO of that company in 2005. And I really think that it all began with that vision and our unwillingness to compromise our integrity in order to accomplish the vision. Now, here's another thing. It didn't take us 3 years to achieve that vision. Like I told Sam when he asked me, it took 1.5 years.
God, I have so many questions. Like I got goosebumps. Michael was with us last time, and Michael's been with us once, and talked about his an experience that he got to have with Billy Graham, and it was so phenomenal. Michael, a couple of things that came up for me is, number one, this vision that you had articulated, laid out, thought through. Had you ever built that in your life before, or was this like really the first time, or had that been a common practice already for you?
That was really the first time. I kind of had the practice of whenever I was confused or wasn't clear about what I wanted, I would commit my thoughts to paper. And there's something about, and somebody once said, thoughts disentangle themselves, passing over the lips and through pencil tips. And so there's something about writing that forces clarity, and it forced me to get clear about what I want. And most leaders, Pete, that I encounter aren't clear about what they want. They got kind of a foggy or a vague notion, but that kind of clarity doesn't drive the acceleration you need if you really want to scale your business and grow it. And so I just kind of instinctively wrote that stuff down, and it almost feels like by accident. I feel like God was guiding me, but almost by accident, there was some power in writing that vision down and then sharing it with others that accelerated our momentum and allowed us to accomplish in what we thought was a big vision, but it allowed us to accomplish it in half the time we thought it was going to take.
Wow. And so now you've presented this vision to your staff for the very first time. You're trying to turn this department around. That's like one of the worst, or the worst in the company,
the worst.
Right? The worst in all, like 14 different divisions, right?
That's right.
The worst, everybody. And now he comes to this point where his plan that he has in place for his team to grow his company, he's forced with a decision, a very tough decision. I got to believe that $3 million made up a decent part of your budget that year. Do you remember was that a decent part of what you thought was going to be?
Yeah, it was about 10% of our sales budget that year, which was kind of the difference between profitability and not profitability. Wow. So it was like the death of the vision right there. You know, all my rah-rah, all my excitement about turning this division around, all my excitement about achieving this lifelong career dream, all of a sudden it comes crashing down on the eve before that phone call with Sam Orr, because I thought, you know, this is like the most short-lived publishing career in history. It's been a month and I'm going to be out of a job.
Wow. And then Michael, you get that call and he's like, you got my blessing. You're good to go.
Yep.
I got to believe like human nature, like I'm just thinking about me. I got to believe human nature at that point, although you felt relieved, if that would have been me, I would have thought, okay, it might not be 3 years now. It might be 4 or 5 years before we get that. There's no way you got like, oh, now we're going to do it sooner. Now this plan that we put in place is going to happen sooner. Like, can you just take us back to that? Yeah. What were you thinking then? Like, okay, I'm through that hard thing, but it's probably going to be a little bit more of a struggle or not quite as well. I mean, can you take us back there?
Yeah. So you're right. I felt immediate relief because now I know I'm not going to get fired and I've got the support of the CEO, but now we're even further behind, right? So now we've got what looked like an insurmountable mountain to climb. Now it seems truly insurmountable. Like we've just made the problem more difficult because we've got to make up this 10% of the sales that we've just lost by pulling the plug. And what I didn't know at the time is we ended up in a lawsuit, which was also a huge distraction. And we eventually won, by the way, but it was a lawsuit nonetheless. And so that ended up being a huge distraction. And I think what happens is sometimes people think, well, if I just get a vision, if I get clarity, then I'm done. You know, it's like that book, The Secret, that was written years ago. You know, I just kind of throw it out to the universe and the universe brings it to my doorstep. I don't have to do any work. No, just because you have a vision doesn't mean you don't have to fight for it. It doesn't mean that you're not going to encounter resistance. Every important thing, Pete, is opposed. Anytime you set out to do something significant, do something good. I don't care if you're just trying to lose some weight, or if you're trying to launch a product, or you're trying to start a business, or you're trying to give, money to charity, there's going to be opposition. There's going to be people that misunderstand. But it's the clarity of that vision that carries you through. It's what keeps you going when you want to quit. Because all of us hit that messy middle where we've invested too much to quit, but we're not sure we've got the resources to finish, and we kind of get stuck. But the vision is what sees us through. And that's why having it written is so important, because in the middle of the messy middle, you get sort of amnesia. You forget, why am I doing this? Just kind of the fog of war. But to have a vision and to go back to that, and as a leader, to continue to give voice to that vision. And I remember one time, fast forward now, this was 2009, the middle of the Great Recession. And now I'm the CEO of Thomas Nelson. I'm running this enterprise. We had 650 employees. We were doing about $250 million a year. It was a fairly significant thing. We were traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And we hit the recession, and we weren't immune from it. Our sales fell 20% in 1 year. So I had an executive coach who said to me, she said, "You got to keep preaching the vision." I said, "But I feel so badly about it because it seems like it's just gone up in smoke again because of the Great Recession." And to be honest, I'm tired of hearing myself talk about the vision. That seems like all I'm talking about. And she said, "Okay, I want to tell you something. When you're sick and tired of talking about the vision, you're half done." And she was right, because as Andy Stanley says, vision leaks. And your job as a leader, if you're not constantly connecting people's daily actions to the big vision, they lose perspective and they want to quit. This is what causes disengagement in companies. This is why I just read a study this last week. On average, only 15% of the average company's workforce is truly engaged. The difference maker is vision. If they feel connected to the vision, if they feel like they're part of a bigger story than just the task they're doing right now, then they become engaged. And that's what creates the momentum that actually drives the achievement of the vision.
Wow. Yeah, I'm so excited about this today because we have so many people that are listening out there. You you run companies, you run events, you're on stages, you're at home with as parents, I even see vision how it carries over into my home, like even into my home. Don't forget about the workplace. Like when Kim and I are clear on our vision, it's like the kids are behind us, and when it's not clear to them, it's like, man, it's like pulling teeth. Like, so this isn't just like for the workplace, this is for the home as well. And so I love what Michael said, because we believe that so much. It's like, what happens in that messy middle? What happens at the bottom, not at the top? Everybody loves to talk to you about what does it take to get to the top. Here's the formula to get to the top. But like, what happens in those moments when crises hits, or you have to compromise your integrity, or you're going to lose 10% of your sales? And so in those moments, it's what we do in those moments that allow us to stay committed to the plan. And Michael, the reason you were able to stay committed, not just to that plan, but to the plan in 2009, and now to the plan of what Michael Hyatt and company is doing, has so much to do with the fact of your clarity on your vision. And not just the clarity, if I'm hearing you right, it's also the communication of that vision to the team. Yes. And so I want to hear, because listen, everybody, this book, I heard something about a book and it's made me want to read more books than I've ever read. I heard not only is it 2 years of an author's time, it's like 20 years of their life's experience. And so you're telling me in 6 hours, I can get 20 years of their experience and 2 years of their work for $15, $20. Like, that's crazy. As somebody said that, I was like, that's so true.
That makes sense. I've never thought about it like that.
So today's not about a book. It's about, Michael, I want to understand this process of the vision leader, because our listeners need to understand that. They need to understand how to get clear on the vision in all areas of their life. So talk about what allowed you to turn number 14 into number 1, what helped you be the successor of the CEO of a company, and now Michael Hyatt and Company. Like, I got Michael Hyatt and Company product everywhere. Like, I got notebooks and journals and day planners and multiple courses right over there. Like, I've gone through everything of Michael's. But today's not about that. It's about, like, the reason this stuff even exists is because of the vision. And so take us through, like, your life, like, just help us understand, yes, the book, but more it's your life journey and story of how can we be great visionary leaders?
Well, this is one of the things I realized, Pete, kind of early on. And that is, if you're a leader, that means, I'm going to make this really simple, you're leading people. But the question is, where are you leading them? What's the destination? Without a vision, you're just kind of wandering around in the wilderness. But with the vision, you're taking people somewhere. A lot of people don't understand the difference between leadership and management. And I talk about this in the book. Both of them are important, but they're different. Leaders create vision, but managers execute vision. Leaders inspire and motivate. That's one of my principal jobs, but managers maintain and administer. Leaders take risks. Managers control risks. Leaders stay focused on the horizon, while managers have their eye on short-term goals and objectives. So again, they're both important. Sometimes those two functions reside in the same role in the CEO, but oftentimes they're different functions. So like at my company, I have a COO, Megan, my oldest daughter. She is our COO. She's primarily responsible for management. I'm primarily responsible for vision. Before Megan came on board, I had to do both of those things. But in that same chapter, in the first chapter, I give some examples of visionary leadership. And one of my favorites, one of my all-time favorites is JFK, President John F. Kennedy. So he stood, and by the way, just let me kind of paint the picture. So the Soviets got into space before the Americans. That created a huge crisis in the American government because we were in the middle of the Cold War. We were in an arms race, and we were scared to death that the Soviets were going to get into space and weaponize it and have a military advantage that we could never, ever compete against. So JFK stood before a joint session of Congress, and listen to what he said. I'm going to quote this. He said, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. It will not be one man going to the moon. If we make this judgment affirmatively, in other words, if we decide to do it, it'll be an entire nation, for all of us must work to put him there. So this incredible moonshot, exciting, big vision. I want you to notice what happened immediately after he did that. President Eisenhower, who was his predecessor, called his announcement hysterical. NASA's first administrator called the president's plan, quote, a very bad move. From 1961 to 1967, less than half the public supported it. People were vocal about opposing it. But despite the naysayers, people stepped up to transform the president's vision to reality. The rest is history, because on July the 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon and returned safely with his crew to Earth. That's the power of a vision. Did you know that when he came up with that vision, when he articulated it, there was no technology to make it happen? Not only did they not have the technology to get somebody to the moon, they didn't even understand the math, the complicated math that it would take to calculate the trajectory, to monitor it, to make adjustments all the way. All that stuff, that strategy, if you will, came about when the vision got clear. And I talk about this in the book. Until your vision is clear, the strategy doesn't matter. People get all upset, or not upset, but excited about business strategy. But strategy comes second. Don't concern yourself with the how until you're clear on the what. And when you're clear on the what, and the Kennedy example proves it, the how will show up. It may take a week, it may take years, but the how will eventually show up if you stay laser locked on the vision.
Wow. And then obviously I know the story. I love the story that echoes the guy, the janitor. I don't like that he saw, and it was JFK of the janitor. Yeah. He saw, and the janitor, he goes, you know what? I don't remember exactly how it goes, but he's basically committed to that vision as he's doing his job, wasn't he?
Yeah. So he said, somebody asked him and said, well, what are you doing here? And he's doing like janitorial stuff. He said, oh, I'm helping put a man on the moon.
Like, that means everybody from the top, like down, like everybody was bought into that. But once again, people, like, listen, you put a vision out there for your business or for your family or for your event or for your company. You put your plan in place. You start communicating to it. And guess what? Just like Kim and I did in our family, just like Michael experienced in that division 30 days after, and just like JFK did, there's going to be resistance. Like, that's not half cup full talk. I am a very optimistic guy, but there's resistance when you put something out there. And whether that's a spiritual force or whatever, I didn't realize the story behind. I just thought everybody bought into JFK's vision. I had never heard the other side, that he faced such major resistance to it. Yeah,
totally. I mean, you know, another story I tell in the book is the story of Steve Jobs, who was also an incredibly visionary leader. And so one of the things he had a vision about was the iPhone. Now, this was at a time when people literally thought that the market was saturated with cell phones. There was no market share left to get. Cell phone manufacturers were duking it out for, you know, fractions of a share because everybody had a cell phone. There was nothing left to invent. Steve gets up on stage, holds up the iPhone, and it doesn't even have a keyboard. It's got one button. Of course, now it doesn't have a button, but it had that one button, no keyboard. BlackBerry was the big thing then, and it was a keyboard. It would have been realistic for him to say, hey, I've got a better keyboard, you know, kind of an incremental thing. But no, he said, we're doing something radically different. We've never been in the cell phone business, but I've got a vision for a phone where your finger is the stylus. It's a best user interface ever invented. And this is going to revolutionize everything, because this does more than make phone calls. It does more than email. I envision a world where there are all these apps to do all kinds of things. And so at that time, he didn't have the full vision of what it would become. But initially, that was met by the press and by his competitors with incredible ridicule. Steve Ballmer, who was the president and CEO of Microsoft, ridiculed him on a talk show where he said, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I'll give him a year. Well, guess what? iPhone went on to be the dominant phone in the world. At the same time, Microsoft had to completely withdraw from the mobile market because they didn't have a vision for it and they didn't have the follow through. They crashed and burned while Steve went on to succeed in ways beyond any of us could have imagined.
So, Michael, let me ask you a question. There's 2 or 3 questions that are popping up for me that I want folks to be able to hear. So what are some of the keys, and maybe you can hit on some of the bigger keys in the book, because I'm going to talk about the book because I want all of our listeners to get this book. But what are some of the keys that can allow us to become great visionary leaders?
Well, let me just start with the vision and what that means, because I think a lot of people are confused when you talk about vision because they think it needs to be some short, pithy, clever statement that you could slap on a coffee mug or put on a t-shirt. And so most leaders, when they're confronted with that, like I was, it was like, you know what? I'm not that clever. I'm definitely not a mystic. And I don't really expect for this to just kind of drop down out of heaven. I don't know how to do it. So people procrastinate. But that's not what a vision is. Let me explain what I mean by a vision. Vision is a clear, and this is the definition I use in the book, The Vision-Driven Leader. Vision is a clear, inspiring, practical, and attractive picture of your organization's future. Okay, so let me unpack that. I have a chapter on clear, chapter on inspiring, chapter on practical, chapter on attractive. But it's a written document, 3 to 5 pages in length. It's got to be more robust than a slogan. You know, if people are going to build to it, if they're going to bring it into reality, it's got to be more robust. You got to paint a vivid picture of that future reality. It articulates an imagined future that's 3 to 5 years out. It's superior to the present. It's stated in the present tense. And Pete, it's got to motivate you as the leader. If you're not motivated by the vision, you can't sell what you haven't bought. You've got to get clear on what you want for the future. It's got to motivate you. You don't have a chance of infecting anyone else with this idea virus of your vision if you're not infected yourself. And then it guides you and your team in your day-to-day decision making. And so we've got a tool that we have called the Vision Scripter, which if people buy the book, there's a bunch of bonuses that they get. One of them is an online tool called the Vision Scripter tool, because I know how terrifying it is for most people to look at a blank sheet of paper and have to, brainstorm their vision. So this works through a series of prompts, asks you a series of questions. When you get through this, you will have about 85 to 90% of your vision script written just by answering these questions. It's built around 4 key areas. What do you see for your team? What's the future of your team? What's the future of your product? The future of your marketing, and the future of your impact.
Team, marketing, product, impact. And how many questions are there that are asked in that?
Not that many, about, I don't know, I haven't actually counted them, but it's probably about 16.
Wow. And in that, it's going to help you really get clear on your vision. That's amazing. So let me ask you this. Can you let us inside without compromising any confidentiality? Can you help us understand with Michael Hyatt and Company right now, what is the vision for Michael Hyatt and Company? Help us maybe see it practically, even with you guys.
Totally. So I'm going to give you some samples, and there's some samples of this in the book, but some of it is proprietary and confidential, but some of it's not. So I'm going to share a section under the team. And by the way, the reason the team is first is because the team is the single most important component of your vision.
Yes.
If your dream doesn't require a team, your dream is too small. And so the team is the primary means by which you're going to bring this vision into reality. If you take care of your team will take care of the customers, and the customers will take care of you. So a couple things that we say here in our vision script. This is a 3-year vision script. We say we maintain a work culture that is fun, wildly productive, and fully supportive of our mission and values. Now I'm going to go ahead and read another paragraph. Our employees experience reasonable autonomy, planning and executing their own work without the impediment of overbearing management, stifling bureaucracy, or procedural red tape. We encourage innovation and experimentation. If something doesn't work, we learn from it and move on.
Mm.
This whole paragraph is why we've really streamlined our procedures. We have a no hassle software policy, for example. If somebody feels like they need to get a software app, they can just buy it. They put it on their company credit card, which every employee has. They just buy it. They don't have to get it approved. They don't have to convince somebody else. We treat them like adults, but it all goes back to our vision. So that informs our day-to-day actions. You want me to give you another one?
Yeah, I love this. I mean, this is so good.
Okay. So here's what we say about our products.
Ooh, this is going to be good.
We say our ultimate product is not our information and tools, but the transformation our clients and customers experience when using them. To facilitate that transformation, we design products that delight our users, exceed their expectations, and deliver breakthrough results. Now, every time we're creating a product, Pete, when we're sitting around as a content team, we've got this echoing in our mind. We go back and refer to this exactly. Okay, how can we exceed our customers' expectations? First, what are their expectations? How could we delight them? You know, how could we go beyond their expectations so they have a wow experience? How could we deliver a breakthrough result? Because it's not this widget people are buying. Nobody buys the widget. They're buying the transformation that they expect or hope to experience through that widget. So that vision informs our product development.
Which I know it is so truthful, because you guys, and I won't mention the details, but you guys have cut product lines that were major product lines of yours, probably because it didn't align with that vision. And we don't need to talk about those things, but probably because it didn't align with that vision, right?
Yeah, totally. And you're bringing up another important thing, and I cover a lot of this in the book, a lot of detail about this. Here's the benefit of having a clear vision. It acts as a filter to help you discern what's a distraction from what's an opportunity. Because a lot of times distractions show up masquerading as opportunities. This is why so many leaders feel overwhelmed. They're doing so many things, right? Because they don't have a filter by which to say yes and by which to say no. So they end up doing everything. They spread their focus too thin. They spread their resources too thin. And this is why the average leader is working 70 to 80 hours a week, feeling overwhelmed, on the edge of burnout, because there's too much work to do. When you've got a clear vision, you can achieve more by doing less. You can do, and our average coaching client in our Business Accelerator program, they grow their business over 60% in the first 12 months of being part of the program. That's impressive. Yes. But here's what's even more impressive. They shave 11 hours off their average work week. Why? Because not everything matters in the same way, right? They don't have to get everything done. They just have to get the right things done. And the right things are the things that lead toward achieving the vision. Everything else is optional.
Man, two big questions for you around that. And I'm excited to read the book, as I already told you before we got started today. Michael, all of those 4 areas are beautiful, and getting those 4 areas dialed in. But my question is, right now, I think there's 2 questions that are pressing for me that I hear a lot of people talk about. Right now, I'm in the book of Exodus, and it's like, man, you know where to go. I mean, God told you exactly where to go. Go, just go. Quit wandering. Like, it's really clear on where you're supposed to go. We don't get that download from heaven necessarily. I know that we have a power that lives within us. So like, this whole thing is predecessor, and not the team's the most important, marketing, product, all that's important. But like, you as the leader have to make the determination of where you even want to go, so that you're not wandering everywhere. Is there anything that the book talks about that before you start laying out all the other stuff? Because where I want to go is really, really important, and I don't want to wander like they did in Exodus. So,
well, what you got to do is get clarity for yourself, and then you've got to sell the vision. And I've got an entire chapter on how to sell the vision, and I talk about selling the vision up, down, and out. So 3 different directions. If you're working for somebody, or if you've got a board of investors or just a board of directors, you got to sell the vision up. You want to make sure that you don't get cut off at the kneecaps because you didn't have an alignment with your boss or your investors about the outcome you were hired to produce. So the vision, when you get clarity around the vision, they usually allow a lot of latitude in terms of strategy and execution. as long as you end up at the destination that you've mutually agreed upon. So selling up is important. Selling down is important because engagement is a big problem in most companies. And trying to get people engaged in the company's vision and in their mission is one of the principal tasks of a visionary leader. And so knowing how to sell it down, and the main thing there is you've got to understand that everybody's favorite radio station is WIIFM. What's in it for me? And so you've got to explain how the vision is going to help them get more of what they want. You know, maybe it's better income. Maybe it's a better work culture. Maybe it's more work-life balance. Whatever it is, you've got to sell it to them in a way that is meaningful to them. Then you've got to sell the vision out. You know, whether it's your vendors or your customers or your constituents or your donors or whatever it is, you got to sell the vision to them. And the reason this is important because a vision is a vision because it's not yet reality. There's nothing to point to and say, oh, this is what we're selling. No, we're selling a vision. We're selling something intangible, something that only exists as we think about it. And so to be able to sell the intangible and make it real to people and recreate the vision you have in your mind, in their mind, is an art and something that leaders have to intentionally cultivate.
Wow. That's so good. That's so good. Last question I have around this, and man, everybody, I think we've got the link where everybody can go get the book is
visiondrivenleader.com /Vargas. We have a special offer for your listeners.
visiondrivenleader.com /Vargas. We will link to it in the show notes. Listen, here's what we want to do. Michael's team has been so generous to not just say, oh, here's the book, but have over $600 of bonuses that exist there. And what I want you to do is I want to make sure you go get that. And I'm going to talk about something here at the end, a little special surprise that we're going to do for everybody that gets the book. And I want you to get the book. And I'll tell you where to go one more time here in just a minute. Michael, here is the only thing that's coming to mind is I've heard this 5 times in the last week, 4 or 5 times. And I've been with some big visionaries. And what you hear there, even I'm guilty of this. You'll hear their teams say they're the visionary leader. And it's kind of like it's good and bad. Like it's a good and bad thing. And it's like they're the visionary leader, you know, more so from the thought process of lots of ideas and that type of deal. And so you see a lot of personalities or a lot of people who are like visionary leaders, and it feels like a trap, kind of like, how do you I've heard it so much. I'm wondering how you stay powerful as the vision leader, where it's kind of not as much of a powerful statement, how I've heard it said, yeah, they're the visionary, kind of like lots of ideas. Any wisdom on that? Because I've heard it so much in the last week.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's going to be said, but I think, again, it behooves us to demystify it for our people, because here's reality. You're not going to always be in head of your organization. If you want an organization that outlives you, you've got to make vision casting, vision creation a part of everybody's job. So I've got people under me. I want them to have a vision for their department. I want them to have a vision for their job. And I want ultimately the person that's going to succeed me. And by the way, we've announced exactly when this is going to happen, January the 1st, 2022. I will step out as the CEO of Michael Hyatt and Company. I'll continue to speak. I'll continue to write. But Megan Miller, my oldest daughter, who's now our COO, will become the CEO of the company. She's now beginning to shape her vision casting chops. This is not rocket science. Anybody can do this. This is why I wrote the book. I wanted to demystify it and make it possible for anybody, and I mean literally anybody, to be a visionary leader. All you got to do is know the formula, put in the work, and just be committed to being that.
I love this, man. I am so excited about reading this book. Like we're just a month and a half into the year, and I'm at about 7 or 8 books read. And this is one I cannot wait to get. And so I want everybody to go to visiondrivenleader.com /Vargas. And I want to make sure that you get this book, and we want you to drop us the receipt, send us the receipt to at InsideTheGreenRoomPodcast.com. And we are going to announce 2 of you as winners that are going to actually go out to Michael Hyatt's Focus Leader event in Nashville. Every single person I've sent to that event or me have raved about it. And it's coming up in, I think, mid-May, isn't it, Michael?
It is.
It's
I can't remember the exact date, May 9th or something, but it's in May.
So 2 of you that talk about, this is all I want you to say. Why did you send us the receipt, and what made you get this book? And from those responses, I'm going to have our team choose 2 people, and we're going to get you tickets to Focus Leader out in Nashville, Tennessee. And by the way, Advance Your Reach and our team at Advance Your Reach will be out there as well. And so, Michael, kind of just parting question to folks. You said something earlier, and I think it's just so beautiful. It's like when that messiness happens and that difficult times come, you said, what I heard you say was having a clear vision is what made you able to get through that and get to the other side. And not just to the other side, probably faster than what you even thought was going to happen after that scenario. So what are just a couple of those things that are important to you? Like when people are facing kind of those difficult circumstances in their business, like you faced back, in 2000, what are kind of some of those general things that you would say to them that they need to really encompass and have to make sure that they don't depart from that plan that's in their hearts?
Well, I would definitely get clear on the vision. And then I would say, trust the process. Mm-hmm. And, the reason I tell people that they're going to hit the messy middle is I don't want them to be surprised by it. And I don't want them to think that something is wrong with them. That's just part of the process. I have a friend who says, it all works out in the end. And if it hasn't worked out, it's not the end. So hang on, it's gonna be okay. And I happen to believe there's a Bible verse that's meant the world to me through the years that I keep coming back to over and over again, which is Romans 8:28, which says, God works all things together for good to those who love him. And so I just trust that everything is working for me, not against me, even the things that look like they're against me. When you think about it, when an airplane takes off, one of the first things as it begins to accelerate that it encounters is drag. So the air provides the resistance, but that resistance is the very thing that creates the lift that makes it possible for the plane to fly. That's how we have to think about these challenges, about these obstacles, about, the resistance. That's what's going to create the lift. These things are intended to make us stronger, to make us realize the vision, probably in a way that's bigger and better than we envisioned initially. But that's where we have to trust the process.
And the last thing that came up for me, and I just kind of trust this question, this was like at the very beginning. We have a lot of people out there that probably right now today have to make some tough decision. And you had to make a tough decision. And I got to believe that decision was not easy going into that office saying, I know it's $3 million to our sales, and I know it's pretty much the difference between profitability and not, but you did it. And so a lot of people out there right now that might be having to make a tough decision in their life, in their business, maybe in their job, what would you say to those people specifically today, Michael?
Well, first of all, it's going to be okay. I think as I look back over my life, I'm 64 years old. I've had a lot of hard things. I've had a business that went bankrupt. There's been rocky times in my marriage. I've been married for 42 years, but there were times in my marriage where it was really, difficult. I had tough times with my kids. But the thing I would say is that those experiences ended up being some of the most important experiences of my life. I wouldn't want to repeat them in most cases, but I also wouldn't trade them. It's because of those experiences that I can appreciate the good things. So I think sometimes it's not about what we're achieving. It's about what we're becoming. And adversity and challenges and all that improve our character, make us better people, and all that's good.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. Hey, everybody, like one of my favorite verses in the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people will perish. And like this book, why I'm so excited, like I'm not saying this like we don't, there's not a lot of books that we promote, but I have consumed, I think, every piece of this amazing man's content. And I'm so excited because my heart's desire is for you to have vision, yes, in your in your business and your organization, which that's what today's episode is really geared towards, is your business and organization. But what Michael's helped me understand is to how to have vision for my family as well, like vision for my family as well. And like, where do I want to be? Like 2020, where do I want to be? And I just heard that voice, like, I don't want to be away from my family more than a tithe, is what I heard really clearly. Well, a tithe for me is 37 days. And so it got really clear on that vision, even in my family's life. And so I went to my wife, I told her that for the sake of accountability, but that was the vision that I had. And she said, awesome. Well, what about when we're on a trip as a family? I was like, no, that doesn't count. And so, cause we're together. And so that's what's begun to happen. Like it's beautiful, way on track for that this year. But just this idea of being able to have vision in your life, in your organization, in your family. I believe there's vision for the double win, the double win, both in business and in my personal life. And Michael, this book is going to be transformational to so many people. And I'm so glad that you came on and got to share more about it today.
Well, Pete, thank you so much for having me on. Your friendship means the world to me and your support means the world to me. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, hey, everybody, make sure one more time, like I want to make sure that you go there and grab that book. Katie just had she just had the link up for me, but it's in the show notes, visiondrivenleader.com/Vargas, $600 worth of bonuses. And we're going to make sure that 2 of you get a ticket to Focus Leader in May, where it's an incredible, incredible experience. And so we will see you next time.